Hello everyone. My video today is the one promised at the conclusion of my review of On Duties, translated by Quintus Curtius. While I was performing my research and trying to ensure I gave the kind of effort Cicero and the aforementioned translator were owed in my review, I came across an article by Miss Donna Zuckerberg in the Eidolon webzine entitled How to Be a Good Classicist Under a Bad Emperor. In this article, Ms. Zuckerberg states, in his book 37, a manosphere writer who goes by the name Quintus Curtius imagines a dystopian world where feminists have rewritten the canon and erased the classics. She then goes on to quote something from 37. One can even imagine a future where classical knowledge will be driven underground, purged from schools, or boulderized, as not being in tune with modern feminism and political correctness. The degradation of humanistic learning has come as a direct result of the feminization of American society. We cannot permit this to happen. The commissars of modern culture don't want you to know too much about history or how things were like in previous eras. End quote from Quintus Curtius, and now returning back to Miss Zuckerberg's article. Predictably, Quintus Curtius has an extremely limited understanding of how things were like in previous eras. His stated goal is to remind readers of the glories of leadership, character, and masculine virtue that can change their lives. So, of course, his understanding of antiquity is a world inhabited by only a few extremely elite men. He has no sense of or interest in social history, cultural history, women, slaves, children, and broad historical trends. The ancient world is reduced to a textbook model for leadership, character, and masculine virtue. Now, I have not read 37, so I cannot comment on that book, as this would be intellectually dishonest. But Quintus Curtius has composed a strong article refuting all of Ms. Zuckerberg's claims, and I recommend you all take a look at it. A link will be posted below. Quickly reviewing Quintus's recent articles gives us further evidence that Ms. Zuckerberg is wrong. If this man has an extremely limited understanding of how things were like in previous eras, he must have educated himself rapidly. Consider his recent article on leadership at the website Return of Kings, entitled 2 Principles of Management You May Not Have Considered. During one section of this article, Quintus states the following. When faced with a new and nascent problem, sometimes the best solution is to temporize. What does temporize mean? Its dictionary definition is to temporarily adopt a particular course of action that conforms with the circumstances. This means that we should seek temporary measures rather than ultimate solutions at certain times. There are good reasons why we should do this. One, trying to deal with a problem too decisively can produce serious blowback. And two, sometimes it is not even clear that the issue in question is an actual problem. A good historical example of this comes from early Roman history. As Rome began to grow in power as a city-state, it ran into the competing interests of other local powers on the Italic peninsula. There were Etruscans, Samnites, and many other peoples in Italy at that time, and all of them watched in alarm as Rome began to consolidate its hold on Latium and project power outwards. But instead of seeking a reasonable accommodation with young Rome, the other states of the Italic peninsula grew fearful and jealous. They sought out alliances with each other and tried to find underhanded ways to block Rome's progress as a political entity. This was natural and expected, but perhaps a better course of action would have been not to attack Rome. Rome's Italic neighbors tried many times to destroy it, but every time they did so, it only made Rome stronger. Rome's leaders developed new institutions, civil offices, and military innovations in response to its external challenges. It may not have done so had it not been so threatened by its neighbors. It is clear Quintus Curtius is providing us a new lifeline to our ancestors. His work is not just necessary, it is vital. Going back to his stellar work in translating On Duties, in the preface he writes, Perhaps his greatest concept, one that lingers in the mind of the reader long after he has closed the cover of the book, is the idea of greatness of spirit, magnitudo animi. Cicero gives us an idea of what he means by greatness of spirit in 1.20 when he tells us, "A strong and great soul is altogether distinguished by two features. One is the concept for the external things of this world. The great soul is persuaded that no man ought to wonder at, hope for, or seek after anything except those things related to goodness and virtue, and that he should succumb to neither another man, nor a disturbance of the spirit, nor trial of fortune. The second feature is that when you have molded your soul with this sort of attitude, as I said above, you perform great achievements of the highest utility, which are extremely arduous, laborious, and full of danger to life and to many other things related to one's livelihood." With his concept of magnitudo animi, Cicero thus takes the discussion to a whole nother level. What we have here is an inspiring vision of man, something that penetrates the reader's heart like an arrow. This, I believe, is the essential thread running through the book. It is this which makes On Duties such an enduring treasure. His sincere, earnest vision is timeless, and this is why we still read him today. This is the spirit that I have tried to capture in this translation, and it is this spirit that I hope the reader will savor in the pages that follow. For Cicero's purpose is not simply to rattle off the characteristics of moral goodness and expediency. He realizes that no dry enumeration of rights and wrongs will captivate the minds of his readers. Like any great orator, and was there anyone greater, he aims far higher, for more universal and evocative principles, and he succeeds brilliantly. When we put down On Duties, we feel imbued by this same greatness of spirit, and we are prepared to renew the contest of life with optimism and fortitude. Quintus Curtius is clearly trying to uplift not just men, but mankind by rekindling our collective desire to return to our roots. No, returning to our roots does not mean recreating the Roman Empire or a facsimile of it. It means understanding and appreciating how knowledge of our ancestors can affect our lives and our destiny as the heirs to Western civilization. It means demonstrating how human agency can affect our future, not just as a nation, but as individual men. Feminists may hate much of the classics or Western history because of the prominence of white men, but one cannot deny reality forever. With this in mind, I believe I can understand some of the fears modern classicists have regarding Quintus Curtius. He's doing their job better than they are, and he's gaining traction with an audience that is not only wide, but growing in the so-called manosphere. Some websites in the manosphere obtain viewership that modern classicists, such as Miss Zuckerberg, are unable to find, no matter how hard they virtue signal. As evidence, see the following Eidolon post from just a few days ago. Eidolon's 2016 By the Numbers, in which Miss Zuckerberg tells us the following. In the tradition of last December's editorial, I've compiled some end-of-year statistics on Eidolon's traffic, author demographics, and content, including a few surprises. Traffic: 109 pieces of content were published on Eidolon this year. Eidolon received over 250,000 hits this year, a 67% increase from last year. The top 5 most read articles produced 30% of the year's total traffic. Those articles were... And there we discover the most trafficked article on her website as the one in which she attacks the alt-right. With this information, it seems clear she wrote How to Be a Good Classicist Under a Bad Emperor as a cry for attention. In my opinion, This is why Miss Zuckerberg targeted not only Quintus Curtius, but some prominent right-of-center individuals such as Milo Yiannopoulos and Rush V. The latter two have absolutely massive audiences she desires access to. Even if she can only receive traffic from people she doesn't care for, it's better than no traffic at all. And to be fair, it did seem to work. If we review the Alexa ratings for the past year, we find Eidolon ended 2016 at a global rank of 712,323. But look closely at the end. A massive spike in traffic increased the rank by 200,000 spots. The timing here is shortly after the article, How to Be a Good Classicist Under a Bad Emperor, was published. Ms. Zuckerberg even tried to double down with a follow-up article entitled After the Manifesto. This article amounted to little more than virtue signaling about people who said awful things about her religion. I will not defend anti-Semitism, but I also will not white knight. Sometimes people say mean things, and sometimes crying for attention means you gain the attention of people who you wish would leave you alone. As a classicist, perhaps this ancient advice from Ovid will help. Ut amiris amabilis esto. I'm sure someone will quibble with my pronunciation, but the point is made. Based on what we've explored, it is clear why Miss Zuckerberg is targeting Quintus Curtius. He is a better classicist, he's rapidly developing, he has a growing audience that pays for his work, and he did it outside of the way one is supposed to. Miss Zuckerberg is living in the deep shadow cast by her successful sibling. Quintus is seizing the opportunity presented by a sea of men who are adrift and abandoned by much of society. The former screams for attention, the latter offers guidance to those who seek wisdom. To be clear to those who misunderstand criticism for hate, let me say, I have no animosity towards Miss Zuckerberg. It's hard not to feel sorry for her. Even when she lands a book deal, a search of her name on Amazon directs people to a book about how great her brother is. It must be very painful to constantly hear things like, "Oh, you're Mark's sister," and wonder how much of your own success has to do with the far greater accomplishments of your sibling. She could probably empathize with Cicero's brother, who was named Quintus. How ironic. However, I believe she should be embracing the model of Quintus Curtius. Scan the horizon, see a need, and fill it. It was clear we desperately needed a modern translation of On Duties, and Quintus not only delivered one, he made it so accessible that people today are rediscovering Cicero. I've seen this firsthand in a number of message boards and online articles, along with conversations with friends and acquaintances. This leads to a greater appetite for and appreciation of the classics. In effect, it makes classicists more prominent, in demand, and necessary. It is clear to me that men such as Quintus Curtius are critical if we are to retain the some knowledge of Western civilization. The cliché is that history is written by the victors. Currently, feminists, SJWs, and others who harbor resentment for our ancestors have taken on the positions of those who teach us about these great men. We cannot allow the wisdom of those who came before us to be nullified by the hatred of those who are here now. Finally, to Miss Zuckerberg and the classicists who have directed their ire at Quintus Curtius. It is time for you to reevaluate the way you approach your discipline. If you do not, and if you continue to preach to a tiny insular audience while seething at men like Quintus who seek to inspire others through understanding the past, there will come a day where you look up and see how far you have fallen behind and how little it is you have contributed. If you do not change for the better, someday you will find among all modern classicists, Quintus Curtius will be called princeps.